This is an unsponsored unboxing of the brand new Sennheiser HDB 630, including initial impressions and sound quality comparisons versus the Sennheiser Momentum 4, the Bowers & Wilkins Px8 S2, and more. Are these headphones worth $500? Let's find out. Hey there, if you're new to recordingnow.com, we purchase every single product we review on the mission to build the largest database of honest, unbiased headphone and wireless earbud reviews, detailed head-to-head comparisons, and overall rankings to help you make a more informed purchase. I use my background in pro audio to create custom EQ settings to get the most sound quality potential out of these headphones, including the Sennheiser Momentum 4. You can access those by clicking the link to the full blog post in the video description or in a pinned comment below, or visiting recordingnow.com using the chat bot in the bottom right, typing in the Model Plus EQ. Alright, so with much anticipation, Sennheiser has released the HDB 630, which is not a direct successor to the Momentum 4 because rumors say that the Momentum 5 is coming out next year. That said, the Momentum 4 is one of the most popular headphones on our website and YouTube channel, and I think is one of the best values for wireless sound quality for its price, which currently sits at $250 USD. So there's a lot of anticipation with HDB 630, so what I'm going to do is a very quick unboxing to give you my physical impressions versus the Momentum 4, which looks pretty identical other than the materials, and then we're going to move on to sound quality, which really is the bread and butter of this channel. Alright, so as you can see, we have a nice box here, and it says that includes that BTD 700 dongle for higher wireless sound quality. I'm very excited to test that out as well. So we're just going to flip this over. I'm just going to untape this and open up the box. So open up the box. Here we go. We have some nice paper here. Take this off. We have a somewhat similar case to the original, although it is bulkier. So the first impression versus the original Momentum 4 case is that it's the same shape, but it is a bit bulkier and thicker, but seems to be about the same dimensions other than from the side. So we unzip this and here we go. So immediately we have a lot of things going on here. There's a lot of stickers giving us instructions. We have under here, I believe, the USB-C. Then we have this small manual here talking about the dongle and the app. We have, I believe, a 2.5mm to 3.5mm stereo cable, airplane adapter, and that BTD 700 dongle, which is nice and compact. All right, so taking the headphones out of the case, it's actually already on, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to turn these off briefly. All right, so my initial impression is that the ear cups are quite thicker than the original Momentum 4. If you put them side by side here, you can see they've added quite a lot of size. I believe this is due to some of that acoustic refinement. I believe they've changed some of the materials and the acoustics inside of the ear cup for better sound quality. Personally, I'm not a fan of this off the bat because I do think this looks rather chunky. I think even the original Momentum 4 had rather large ear cups, which is nice in terms of the size and my ear cups being free. I'm going to briefly wear these to give some impressions here. Alright, so comfort-wise, I'm pleasantly surprised. I think that these are actually more comfortable than the Momentum 4 was from the factory. I find that the headband is much improved. It's more plush as I'm pressing down here. If you look at the original Momentum 4, it feels harder. And I think that the earpad cushions themselves have been improved over the original. They're a little bit more plush and supportive. But most importantly, that clamping force is much reduced versus the stock Momentum 4. So I did take a look in the mirror, and I think that my suspicions are correct. These do look a bit like earmuffs when they're worn on the head, just a little bit goofier than the stock Momentum 4. And also you have these silver hinges and headband, which unfortunately I was really hoping they would upgrade to some kind of aluminum or metal for this, and it seems to be the same plastic that they feature on the Momentum 4. That said, they did improve the material on the headband versus the fabric of the Momentum 4 to this nice soft leather, and you still have this rubberized headband material, which feels a little bit better, or maybe it's identical for both of these. What's more important is that the cushioning of the headband itself has been improved. When it comes to the interior ear cup space, it's solid, it's angled so that my ears are pretty free inside, maybe slightly touching on the tip of my ears, but nothing egregious like the Sony XM6. Alright, so that wraps up my physical impressions of the HDB 630. Overall, I'm impressed by the superior comfort and the slight improvements from the factory versus the Momentum 4. That said, for twice the price, I was expecting a little bit more upgrade in the materials used. We have something in a similar price range like the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra 2nd Gen that does feature that metal here on the headband and on the hinges. And of course, we have the AirPods Max, which has the the stainless steel hinges and the aluminum ear cups. Now, it does compare favorably to the mostly plastic Sony XM6, which I'll say is nice. But really, if we're using the Momentum 4 as a frame of reference at half the price, it doesn't really seem like that big of a leap in terms of the build quality. All right, so wrapping up those impressions, I'm about to plug these into my phone, use the dongle, test these headphones for a few hours, and then come back with my initial listening impressions. All right, so I'm back from my initial listening impressions with the Sennheiser HDB 630, and much to my surprise, we actually have a bit of a mixed bag here. Now, those who have been following the channel know that we go out, we purchase these headphones, pay full price, unlike many other reviewers who do receive free copies for review and sometimes get compensated for their video as well. And I just think that that's very important because I'm going to be sharing with you my honest notes and reactions and thoughts about these headphones. And although I have not watched any other reviews, I have read a little bit online. It seems to be overwhelmingly positive, and that's where I have a little pause. And really, my issue with the headphones is not so much the HDB 630 itself, but it's actually with how it compares to the Momentum 4 at half the price. So let's get into it. Before I jump into the critique, I do want to say that I am impressed by the HDB 630. I find it to be a very good headphone, but that said, it is not perfect, and I'm going to explain why. So first, let's talk about the noise canceling real quick, which I found to be about the same as the Momentum 4, which seems to be about average, maybe slightly above average, but that doesn't seem to be changed or improved. So if you're looking for better noise canceling with the HDB 630, unfortunately, I don't think it's there. Now let's talk about the sound profile. So this is obviously a much more neutral stock tuning compared to the very consumer-friendly Momentum 4. The best way I would describe this is being accurate without being boring. So it's pretty clean, it's a little clinical, maybe a little sterile for some, but it's also more natural sounding than the Momentum 4. My first critique has to do with that sound profile. So these are obviously aimed at audiophiles, but if you're like me, you're probably thinking, okay, Momentum 5 coming next year, but that said, Momentum 4 was so great that these are a step up from the Momentum 4. And they are, and I'll explain why they are soon, but I also want to say that these are targeted at audiophiles. And unfortunately, that's going to be the real sticking point for these headphones, is that if the average consumer or listener is going to be paying the premium for these headphones, they might be disappointed. The first reason is going to be these are probably way too bass light stock for most consumers. Now, that's not a bad thing. Neutral is a good starting point for the advanced EQ, which they've included, and that's something that I'm going to be diving into in my full review and sharing my EQ settings as I always do. Now, that segues perfectly into talking about EQ. So to my surprise, and this is where I have a little bit of issue, is that the way that I EQ'd the Momentum 4, which has received a good amount of positive feedback, I'm pretty proud of the work I did with the Momentum 4, and I was listening to it for hours before the HDB 630 came in the mail. What I find interesting is when you compare the two frequency response graphs of the HDB 630, it's actually coincidentally similar to the way I EQ'd the Momentum 4. You can check out those EQ settings in the full blog post below, but essentially I made cuts to the bass and the lower mids, a slight bump up at the 1K region, boosted the 4K region, and made a significant cut around the 8K region. So within the restraints of the 5-band EQ of the Momentum 4, it's actually pretty similar to the frequency response of the HDB 630. So on one hand, I feel that that validates the direction that I was taking the Momentum 4 as far as the EQ. That said, it's a little bit too close for comfort how good the Momentum 4 sounds back to back with HDB 630. Now, some of the positives of the 630 is that the vocals are more detailed and have a more natural timbre than the Momentum 4. And this is arguably the best wireless headphone I've heard to date for classical music specifically, where the piano and strings timbre is excellent and very realistic. Drums are supremely detailed, especially cymbals, which is rare for this class. And I think some of that has to do with using the dongle, which we'll get into. Now, unfortunately for jazz, instruments like the trumpet can get unfortunately strident, especially Miles Davis, which leads me to a caveat for these headphones is that they have a slight sharpness and sibilance to the treble. It has some peaky regions in the treble that need to be EQ'd out. Now, speaking more about the positives, immediately, the HDB 630 versus the Momentum 4 has more resolution, clarity, separation, and layering. To best describe it, it sounds like the Momentum 4 in wired mode, but in a wireless package. This is actually a similar impression to what I got from the Px8 S2 versus the original Px8. It really sounded like the wired Px8, but even better. Now, interestingly, I have a slightly different EQ for the wired Momentum 4 versus wireless that hasn't been shared online, but that's another point to where the Momentum 4 is uncomfortably close to the HDB 630. Now, thanks to the included dongle, more people can benefit from a higher resolution and better codec with the 630. So what you're going to get from that is going to be even more openness, headroom, and better dynamics. Now, when it comes to the audiophile technicalities, I do think that the HDB 630 improves upon the Momentum 4 in every single way. But again, I think that the Momentum 4, which you can actually use a dongle with as well to get that higher level of resolution to be on par with HDB 630. And if you do apply some custom EQ as well, that's where I think that at half the price, the Momentum 4 is actually coming away from this comparison looking a little bit more attractive. All right, so compared to the Bowers & Wilkins Px8 S2, the Px8 is immediately the warmer and more musical and lively headphone out of the box. The best way for me to describe it is the HDB 630 is like really detailed recordings in a studio environment, and the Px8 S2 is more like live music. It makes music come to life. When it comes to the technical sound quality, I firmly believe that these headphones are on the same level as each other. There's nothing new that I'm hearing with the 630 as far as the audiophile technicalities or the details or the soundstage that I don't think the Px8 S2 can compete with. Both of these headphones are wonderfully detailed for being wireless headphones. Now, this is just a first impressions, but if you ask me which headphone I'm leaning towards, it's still going to be the Px8, which is more expensive. But what I think is great about these two headphones in particular is I think we are finally getting wired headphone quality in a wireless package. I firmly believe that these two headphones are pushing forward this space. And with the competition heating up, the real winner is going to be you, the consumer. So far, I feel like I've been critiquing the HDB 630 pretty harshly. I think the expectations coming from the Momentum 4 were pretty high. We're big fans of the Momentum 4, if you couldn't tell. And I just find it a little bit uncomfortable how similar the HDB 630 in terms of both its design and even its sound quality, because to my knowledge, it has a very similar, if not the same identical driver to the Momentum 4. It's the 42mm. If anyone knows differently, I'd love to hear it in the comments. But unfortunately, I just did not see as much of a quantum leap from the Momentum 4, which is not even supposed to be the same line of headphone despite looking almost identical, than I heard from the original Px8 to the Px8 S2. But I do want to leave this first impressions video on a positive note, which is I am impressed by the HDB 630 in the same way I'm impressed by the Px8 S2. Until I really dive deep with the custom EQ for the HDB 630, I simply cannot enjoy them for music as much as the Px8 S2, both stock and after EQ. So there's a very good chance that after dialing in proper EQ to make these more consumer friendly, that these might even top the Px8 S2. Only time will tell. So if you enjoyed this video, found it useful, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment below letting me know. If you have any questions about any of these headphones or any of the headphones on the website, leave in the comments. Try to get back to as many people as possible. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because the full review with custom EQ settings is coming for the HDB 630 very soon. And there's a real chance that we get a pleasant surprise considering how neutral and flat the tuning is from the factory. Now, if you want to keep watching so that you can make a more informed purchase, I'm going to link a relevant video and playlist here so you can check out the rest of our reviews and comparisons. Thanks for watching and happy listening.